The chains were cold against Park Yuna's wrists. She had stopped feeling the pain 3 days ago. Now there was only the numbness, the constant vibration of the ship's engines beneath her feet, and the smell of fear from the creatures packed into the cargo hold around her. She was not alone. There were perhaps 60 prisoners in the hold, maybe more. It was hard to count in the dim red light that the Velori used on their ships. The light hurt human eyes less than it hurt some of the others. Yuna had learned to be grateful for small things. The Velori guards walked between the rows of prisoners twice every cycle. They were tall, almost 3 meters, with hard shells covering their bodies like armor made of bone. Their eyes were black and showed nothing. Their mouths clicked when they spoke to each other in their sharp, cutting language. They never spoke to the prisoners. Prisoners were cargo. Cargo did not need words. Yuna watched them carefully each time they passed. She watched how they moved, where they looked, what made them pause. This was an old habit. Her father had taught her to observe everything when she was young. He said that knowledge was the only weapon that could not be taken away. She wondered if he still believed that, wherever he was now, if he was still alive at all. The raid on Outpost 7 had happened fast. Yuna had been working in the maintenance tunnels beneath the mining station when the alarm started screaming. She had tried to reach the emergency shelters, but the Velori were already there. They moved through the station like water through broken pipes, filling every space, drowning every hope. She remembered the sound of pulse weapons. She remembered screaming. She remembered a guard grabbing her arm and throwing her into a line of other humans being marched toward the landing ships. That was 11 days ago. She had counted each cycle carefully. Counting kept her mind sharp. Counting kept her sane. The prisoner next to her was a Dren, a small creature with gray skin and too many eyes. It had stopped eating 2 days ago. Yuna knew it would be dead soon. The Velori did not care. Dead prisoners were simply thrown into the waste recyclers. The Empire had countless labor camps. There were always more workers to replace the ones who died. Yuna was 32 years old. She had spent 15 of those years working as an engineer on human colonies scattered across the outer sectors. She knew how to fix things. She knew how to build things. She knew how to survive. These skills had kept her alive so far. She intended to keep it that way. On the 12th day, something changed. The ship's engines shifted to a different rhythm. Yuna felt it before she heard it. The vibration changed from the steady hum of faster-than-light travel to something slower, more careful. They were approaching something. They were stopping. The other prisoners felt it too. The hold grew quiet. Even the Dren beside her opened its many eyes and looked toward the ceiling, as if it could see through the metal to whatever waited outside. The main door opened with a hiss of pressure. 3 Velori guards entered, followed by an officer. Yuna could tell he was an officer by the markings on his shell and the way the other guards moved around him. His name, she would later learn, was Commander Kryn. He looked at the prisoners the way a farmer might look at livestock. He clicked something to his guards. They began unchaining prisoners from the walls. Yuna was pulled to her feet. Her legs nearly gave out beneath her. She forced them to hold. Weakness was death. They were marched through the corridors of the transport ship and into a docking tube. The tube connected to something else, something much, much larger. Yuna saw it through a small window as they walked. The ship was enormous. It hung in space like a sleeping giant, dark and silent. Its shape was strange, all curves and angles that seemed to flow into each other in ways that made her eyes hurt if she looked too long. Around it floated the broken remains of other vessels, some of them as large as moons. A graveyard of ships, a cemetery in the stars. The Velori called it the Sleeper. She heard the guards whispering the name to each other. Even they seemed afraid. The inside of the Sleeper was nothing like the transport ship. Where the Velori vessel was all hard edges and military function, this ship was different. The corridors curved gently. The walls were smooth, almost organic, and everywhere there were symbols. Strange marks carved or grown into every surface. Yuna did not recognize the language, but something about the shapes felt familiar in a way she could not explain. The prisoners were taken to a large chamber and forced to sit. Commander Kryn stood before them and spoke in broken common, the trade language used between species. "You are here to work," he said. His voice was like stones grinding together. "This ship is old, very old. No one knows who built it. No one can make it work, but it has value, it has secrets. You will help us find them." He paused and looked at the prisoners with his empty black eyes. "Those who work will eat. Those who do not work will die. This is simple. Even humans can understand this." There was laughter from the guards. Yuna kept her face empty. She had learned long ago that showing anger to those with power was a luxury she could not afford. They were divided into groups and sent to different parts of the ship. Yuna was placed with a crew assigned to clear debris from the lower corridors. The work was hard. The sleeper was filled with the remains of whatever had happened to it long ago. There were broken machines, collapsed walls, and things that might have once been furniture or might have been something else entirely. Everything was covered in dust that had been gathering for longer than Yuna could imagine. She worked without complaint. She observed everything. She noticed that the Velori scientists who sometimes passed through the corridors seemed frustrated. She heard them arguing about power systems that would not respond and doors that would not open. The sleeper was giving up none of its secrets. On her third night aboard the ship, Yuna found herself alone in a maintenance shaft. She had crawled there to fix a broken light unit that the guards wanted repaired. The shaft was small and dark, and for a moment she was invisible. For a moment she was free. She sat in the darkness and let herself breathe. She was so tired, so very tired. Without thinking, she began to hum. It was an old song, a lullaby her grandmother used to sing when Yuna was a child. The words were in Korean, the old language of her ancestors. She barely remembered what they meant. Something about stars, something about children who wandered far from home but always found their way back. She did not expect anything to happen. She was just a tired woman singing to herself in the dark. But then the wall beside her began to glow. It was soft at first, barely visible, a gentle blue light tracing the strange symbols carved into the metal. Yuna stopped singing. The light faded. She waited, her heart pounding in her chest. Then very slowly she sang again. The light returned, brighter this time, and somewhere deep in the ship something hummed in response. Not the engines, something else. Something that had been sleeping for a very, very long time. Yuna pressed her hand against the glowing wall. The metal was warm. The ship had heard her. Yuna told no one about what had happened in the maintenance shaft. She knew better. Among prisoners, secrets were the only currency that mattered, and this secret was worth more than she could measure. In the days that followed, she watched the ship differently. She looked at the symbols on the walls and tried to understand them. They were everywhere, carved into door frames and etched into floor panels. The Velori scientists walked past them without interest. They had been studying these marks for decades and found nothing useful. To them, the symbols were decoration, meaningless patterns left by a dead civilization. But Yuna was beginning to see something else. The work continued. Each day, the prisoners were woken before the lights came on, fed a thin paste that tasted like nothing, and sent to their assigned sections. Yuna's group cleared debris from the lower corridors, dragging broken machinery to collection points where Velori engineers examined each piece for value. Most of it was useless. Whatever technology had once powered this ship was far beyond anything the Empire could understand. Death became common. A prisoner was crushed by falling wreckage. Another simply stopped breathing in the night. The Dren who had sat beside Yuna on the transport ship died on the fourth day, its many eyes finally closing for good. The guards threw the bodies away and brought new prisoners from the transport. There were always more. Yuna survived by being useful. When a power cable needed splicing, she knew how to do it. When a ventilation fan stopped working, she could repair it. The guards began to notice her. They stopped looking at her as just another piece of cargo. This was dangerous in some ways, but it was also protection. Useful prisoners lived longer. On the seventh day, she found a way back to the maintenance shaft. She told her guard that she needed to check the light unit she had repaired before. The guard was bored and tired and did not want to climb into the small space himself. He waved her forward and sat down to wait, his attention already drifting. Yuna crawled into the shaft and found the spot where she had sat before. The symbols on the wall were dark now. The blue glow was gone. For a moment, she wondered if she had imagined everything. Exhaustion could do strange things to the mind. Perhaps she was losing her grip on reality. But she had to know. She closed her eyes and tried to remember her grandmother's song. The old woman had died when Yuna was 12, but her voice still lived in Yuna's memory. Soft and warm, like sunlight through paper screens. She had sung to Yuna every night, songs about mountains and rivers and stars that watched over sleeping children. Yuna began to sing. Her voice was rough and quiet, barely more than a whisper. But the words came back to her, rising from some deep place she had almost forgotten. The wall began to glow. This time, Yuna did not stop. She kept singing and the light grew stronger. The symbols blazed with blue fire, spreading out from where her hand touched the metal, racing along the corridor in both directions. And then she heard it. A sound like a great machine waking from sleep. A deep hum that vibrated through the bones of the ship and through her own bones as well. The ship was listening. The ship was responding, but only to her voice, only to her words. She stopped singing and the light faded slowly, like embers dying in a fire. The hum continued for a moment longer, then settled into silence. Yuna sat in the darkness, her hand pressed against the warm metal, her mind racing with questions she could not answer. How was this possible? Why did the ship respond to Korean, an Earth language, an old language from a small planet on the edge of nowhere? The Velori had tried everything to wake this ship. They had used their own languages, their telepathic powers, their most advanced technology. Nothing had worked, but Yuna had sung a lullaby and the ship had answered. It made no sense, unless everything she knew about history was wrong. She heard footsteps. The guard was coming. Yuna quickly wiped her eyes and crawled back toward the entrance of the shaft. She emerged just as the guard reached the opening, his black eyes suspicious. "What took so long?" he demanded in broken common. "The connection was damaged," Yuna said. Her voice was steady. She had learned to lie with a calm face. "I had to rebuild it." The guard studied her for a moment, then lost interest. He grabbed her arm and pulled her back toward the work area. Yuna went without resistance, but her mind was far away. That night in the crowded sleeping chamber, Yuna lay awake and thought about her grandmother. The old woman had been strange in ways that Yuna had never understood as a child. She had insisted that Yuna learn the old songs perfectly, every word, every note. She had made Yuna practice them over and over until they were burned into her memory. When Yuna had asked why, her grandmother had only smiled and said that someday she would understand. Yuna had thought it was just the foolishness of an old woman clinging to traditions that no longer mattered. She had been so wrong. The prisoner beside her was a young human man named Kang Tiho. He had been captured in the same raid as Yuna, though she had not spoken to him until now. He was perhaps 25 years old, with a soldier's build and a soldier's scars. He had been part of the Colonial Defense Force, one of the few who had tried to fight back when the Velori came. "You were gone a long time today," he said quietly. His eyes were on the guards at the door. The others noticed. "I was working," Yuna said. "You were exploring." Tiho turned to look at her. His eyes were sharp, missing nothing. "I saw your face when you came back. You found something." Yuna said nothing. Trust was dangerous. "I am not your enemy," Tiho said. "We are all going to die here eventually. The question is whether we die like animals or whether we die trying to be something more." He rolled over and closed his eyes. Yuna watched him for a long time. She thought about what he had said. She thought about the ship and its secrets. She thought about the blue light and the deep hum of ancient machines waking from sleep. Maybe she did not have to do this alone. The next day, Yuna requested assignment to a different section. The guards did not care where she worked as long as she was useful. She was sent to the upper levels, where teams were trying to clear a collapsed corridor near what the scientists believed was the ship's command center. The work was harder here. The debris was heavier and more dangerous, but Yuna was not interested in the debris. She was interested in the walls. The symbols were different in this section, more complex, more dense. They covered every surface like writing, like a message waiting to be read. Yuna studied them whenever she could, tracing the shapes with her eyes, looking for patterns. And she found them. Some of the symbols were not alien at all. They were old, ancient, but they were human. She recognized the roots of them, the basic shapes that had evolved over thousands of years into the Korean characters her grandmother had taught her. Someone had built this ship using a language that came from Earth, from Korea, from a time so old that history had forgotten it. The sleeper was not alien, it was human. But how? Humans had only reached the stars a few hundred years ago. They were newcomers to the galaxy, primitives in the eyes of the older species. How could humans have built something like this, something ancient beyond measure? Yuna did not know, but she intended to find out. That evening, as the lights dimmed and the guards changed shifts, she slipped away from her group and made her way toward the command center. The corridor was blocked by debris, but there was a gap just large enough for a human to squeeze through. The Velori were too big. They had been trying to cut through the blockage for weeks, but Yuna simply crawled. On the other side, she found a door. It was massive, easily 10 meters tall, covered in symbols that pulsed with faint light. There was no handle, no control panel, nothing that looked like a way to open it. The Velori had tried everything. They had failed. Yuna stood before the door and placed her hand against the cold metal. She opened her mouth and began to speak. Not singing this time, but speaking. Words her grandmother had made her memorize as a child. Words she had been told to never forget. Words she had carried all her life without understanding why. The door began to open. The door opened slowly, grinding against centuries of silence. Blue light spilled out from the chamber beyond, washing over Yuna like water. She stood frozen for a moment, unable to move, unable to breathe. Then she stepped inside. The command center was vast. The ceiling rose high above her, lost in shadow. The walls curved inward like the inside of an egg, smooth and perfect. And everywhere, on every surface, the symbols glowed with soft blue fire. They pulsed slowly like a heartbeat, like the ship itself was alive and breathing. In the center of the room stood a console. It was made of the same strange metal as everything else on the ship, but shaped into something almost like a chair, surrounded by floating panels of light. Yuna walked toward it, her footsteps echoing in the silence. The panels tracked her movement, turning to follow her like eyes. She reached the console and looked down at its surface. More symbols, more words in a language that was almost familiar, almost readable. She traced them with her fingers and felt the metal warm beneath her touch. "Who are you?" she whispered. "What are you?" The ship answered. A voice filled the chamber. It was neither male nor female, neither young nor old. It spoke in a language Yuna had never heard, but somehow she understood it. Not with her mind, but with something deeper, something in her blood. "Welcome home, daughter of the Wanderers." Yuna felt tears on her cheeks. She did not know why she was crying. She did not understand what was happening. But something inside her, something ancient and buried, recognized this place, recognized this voice. "I do not understand," she said. "Who built you? Where did you come from?" The ship's answer came in images rather than words. They flooded into Yuna's mind like a river breaking through a dam. She saw Earth, but not the Earth she knew. An older Earth. A different Earth. She saw great cities rising toward the sky, ships launching into the darkness between stars, humans spreading across the galaxy like seeds scattered by the wind. She saw war, terrible war. Something had come from the spaces between galaxies, something hungry and endless. The first humans had fought it. They had won, but at a cost beyond measure. Their civilization had been shattered. Their numbers had fallen to almost nothing. The survivors had made a choice. They would hide. They would forget. They would let their children grow up believing they were alone in the universe, believing they were primitive, believing they were small. They would wait until the danger had passed, and they would leave guardians behind to watch over their children until they were ready to remember. Ships like the Sleeper, thousands of them scattered across the galaxy, waiting. Una saw her grandmother's face in the images. Not her grandmother as she had known her, but younger, standing in a room much like this one, speaking words of activation and inheritance. Her family had carried this knowledge for generations, passing it down from mother to daughter, grandmother to granddaughter. The words, the songs, the memories, everything Una needed to wake the ship. "I am the daughter of the Wanderers," Una said, and now she understood the words her grandmother had taught her. "I have returned." The console blazed with light. The floating panels rearranged themselves around her, presenting information she could barely comprehend. Star maps, fleet positions, weapons systems. The Sleeper was not just a ship, it was a warship, one of the most powerful vessels ever built, and it had been waiting for a human voice to command it. "Systems online," the ship said. "Awaiting orders, Commander." Una stared at the displays. Commander. The word felt impossible in her mouth. She was an engineer, a prisoner, a woman in chains. How could she command anything? But the ship did not care about her doubts. It only cared that she was human, that she carried the blood of the builders, that she knew the words. A sound behind her made her turn. Footsteps, many footsteps. The door she had opened was no longer empty. Commander Kryn stood at the entrance of the chamber, surrounded by guards. His black eyes reflected the blue light of the console. His mouth clicked open and closed in what might have been shock. "What have you done?" he demanded. Una faced him. She was still in chains. She was still a prisoner, but something had changed. She could feel the ship around her, waiting, watching, ready. "I woke it up," she said simply. Kryn stepped forward, his guards fanning out around him. "This ship belongs to the Velori Empire. You are property of the Empire. Whatever you have done, you will undo it now." "I cannot undo it," Una said. "The ship chose me. It will only respond to human commands." Kryn made a sound that might have been laughter. It was hard to tell with Velori. "Humans are nothing. You are weak. You are primitive. You have no place among the stars. Whatever trick you have used, we will find it. We will take this ship, and you will spend the rest of your short life in pain for this insult." He raised his hand to signal his guards. Una braced herself for the blow that would follow. It never came. The ship moved. That was the only way to describe it. One moment the guards were advancing. The next moment, a wave of force swept through the chamber, lifting them off their feet and throwing them against the walls. Kryn managed to stay standing, but barely. His shell cracked where he had been struck. Blue blood dripped from beneath his armor. "The commander is not to be harmed," the ship said. Its voice was calm, almost gentle. "Please remove the hostiles from this chamber." More forces swept through the room. The guards were pushed toward the door, sliding across the floor as if the gravity itself had turned against them. Kryn tried to fight, but it was useless. In seconds, he and all his soldiers were outside the chamber. The massive door began to close. "This is not over," Kryn screamed. "You cannot hide in there forever. When we cut through this door, you will pay for this." The door sealed shut. Silence returned. Una stood alone in the command center, surrounded by light and power beyond anything she had imagined. Her hands were shaking. Her heart was racing. She looked at the console and saw her reflection in its surface. She looked like a ghost. She felt like one too. "What happens now?" she asked. You must decide, the ship said. The Velori will try to take me. They will fail, but they will destroy many prisoners in the attempt, or you can choose to act. Act how? The star maps shifted, showing the space around them. Yuna saw the Velori transport docked to the sleeper. She saw the positions of guards throughout the ship. She saw the prisoners in their holding cells, waiting to die. I can give you control, the ship said, but you must be willing to take it. The first humans built me to protect, but protection sometimes requires force. Are you prepared for that? Yuna thought about her grandmother, about the songs and the words and the long chain of mothers and daughters stretching back through time. They had carried this burden so that someday, someone could stand here and make this choice. She thought about the prisoners, the Dren who had died beside her, the countless others who would follow. She thought about Kang Tiho and his words about dying like animals, or dying trying to be something more. Yuna placed her hands on the console. The chains on her wrists fell away, unlocked by the ship. She felt power flowing through her fingertips, connection to every system, every weapon, every defense the sleeper possessed. Show me how to save them, she said. The ship began to teach her. The sleeper came alive around Park Yuna like a giant waking from a 1,000-year dream. She felt it through the console, through the connection that now linked her mind to the ship's ancient systems. Power flowed through corridors that had been dark for ages. Doors that had refused to open now responded to her thoughts. The ship was hers, and she was its commander. But she was still learning, and the Velori were not waiting. Through the ship's sensors, she watched Commander Kryn rallying his forces. He had called for reinforcements from the transport. More guards were pouring through the docking tube, armed with cutting tools and heavy weapons. They intended to break through the door to the command center and take back control by force. They did not understand that there was nothing to take back. The sleeper would never respond to them. It was built for humans by humans, and it would accept no other master. How do I stop them without killing them all? Yuna asked. There are many options, the ship replied. Non-lethal suppression fields, gravity manipulation, atmospheric controls, the choice is yours. Yuna studied the display showing the guards advancing through the corridors. She thought about the prisoners still locked in their cells. They were in danger. If Kryn decided that destroying the prisoners would somehow hurt her, he would not hesitate. Can you seal the areas where the prisoners are being held? Keep the guards out. Yes, but this will also trap the prisoners inside. They will be safe but not free. That is enough for now, do it. The ship responded instantly. Throughout the sleeper, doors slammed shut and locked. Emergency barriers dropped from ceilings. The guards found themselves blocked at every turn, their cutting tools useless against metal that had survived the death of stars. Kryn's voice crackled over the ship's communication system. He had found a working terminal and was broadcasting to anyone who would listen. Human, you cannot win this. The Empire has a war fleet stationed in this sector. I have already sent a distress call. They will be here within hours. Surrender now and I will grant you a quick death. Continue this foolishness and you will suffer beyond anything you can imagine. Yuna did not respond. She was too busy thinking. A war fleet, hours away. Even with the sleeper's power, she was one woman with no training, no experience, and no crew. How could she possibly fight an entire fleet? Ship, she said, can we run? Can we escape before they arrive? Yes, but the prisoners on the transport cannot. If we detach and flee, the Velori will take their revenge on those left behind. Yuna closed her eyes. She thought about all the faces she had seen in the cargo hold. Humans, Dren, and a dozen other species she did not even know the names of. They were nothing to the Velori. Cargo, disposable. Then we cannot run, she said. Agreed. What do you wish to do? I wish to save everyone. Tell me how. The ship was silent for a moment. When it spoke again, there was something different in its voice. Something that might have been respect. The Sleeper is one of many vessels built by the first humans. Others are scattered across the galaxy, hidden in places the younger species have never found. Some are damaged, some are lost, but some are waiting just as I was waiting for a voice to wake them. New images appeared on the display. Stars, systems, locations marked with symbols Yuna was beginning to understand. I can send a signal, the ship continued. A call to those who can hear. There are no guarantees. The other ships may be too damaged to respond. Their human guardians may have died without passing on the knowledge, but if even one answers, the balance changes. Do it, Yuna said. Send the signal. The Sleeper hummed with power. Yuna felt something vast reaching out from the ship, a pulse of energy that spread across space at speeds she could not comprehend. The call had been sent. Now all she could do was wait. But waiting did not mean doing nothing. She accessed the ship's internal systems and found the section where the human prisoners were being held. Among them was Kang Tiho. She opened a channel. "Tiho, can you hear me?" There was a moment of static, then his voice came through, rough with surprise. "Yuna, is that you? What is happening?" The doors all sealed and the guards disappeared. I do not have time to explain everything, but the short version is this. I am in control of the ship. The Sleeper is a human vessel built by our ancestors a very long time ago. It responds to me because I carry the words to command it. Silence, then. You are not joking. I am not joking. The Velori have called for a war fleet. It will be here soon. I am going to try to fight them, but I need help. I need people I can trust. What do you want me to do? Yuna looked at the display showing the ship's layout. The Sleeper was enormous. Running it alone was impossible, even with the ship's automated systems. I am going to unlock the human cells, she said. Gather everyone who can fight or work. There are weapon lockers and equipment stations throughout the ship. The symbols on the walls will guide you. Find anything useful and bring people to the command center. The symbols, I cannot read them. You will learn, we all will. The ship can help. She unlocked the doors. On the display, she watched as humans emerged from their cells, confused but alive. Tiho moved among them quickly, organizing, directing. He was a soldier. He understood chaos. Yuna had chosen well. While the humans organized, the Velori grew desperate. Kryn ordered his guards to attempt a breach of the command center using explosives. The charges detonated against the door and did nothing. The metal was not even scratched. Your weapons are toys, the ship announced over the internal speakers. You are standing in a vessel built to survive the death of suns. Go home, Commander. There is nothing for you here. Kryn's rage was visible even through the grainy footage of the internal cameras. He struck one of his own guards, then screamed orders that Yuna could not understand. The guards began retreating toward the transport. They are leaving, Yuna asked, suspicious. No, they are repositioning. The transport has weapons. They intend to fire on us from outside. Can they hurt us? No, but they can hurt themselves. Their weapons will reflect from our shields and destroy them. Yuna thought about this. Kryn was about to get his soldiers killed through his own arrogance. She felt no love for the Velori, but she did not want to watch them die for nothing. Can we stop them? Disable the transport without killing them? Yes, but this will require activating weapon systems. Do you authorize this action? Yes, disable only. Do not kill unless absolutely necessary. The Sleeper fired. It was not like anything Yuna had seen before. There was no beam, no missile, no flash of light. The transport simply stopped. Its engines died. Its weapons went dark. It hung in space beside the Sleeper like a toy that had run out of power. Through the sensors, Yuna saw Velori guards floating in the transport's corridors, their systems dead, their communications cut. They were trapped but alive. The first humans arrived at the command center. Tiho led them, a group of perhaps 30 men and women, all of them prisoners, all of them wearing the same look of confused hope. They stopped when they saw Yuna standing at the console, surrounded by light, the ship's displays dancing around her like stars. "This is real," Tiho said. "It was not a question." "This is real," Yuna confirmed. "And we have about 2 hours before a Velori war fleet arrives to take it away from us. Can we win?" Yuna looked at the display. Somewhere out there, her signal was spreading across the stars. Somewhere, maybe, other ships were waking. Other voices were answering. "I do not know," she said honestly, "but we are going to try." She began teaching them the words. The war fleet arrived exactly when Kryn had promised. 127 ships dropped out of faster-than-light travel and spread across the void like a net closing around prey. They were Velori military vessels, each one bristling with weapons, each one carrying soldiers who had conquered 100 worlds. Yuna watched them on the display and felt nothing but a strange calm. She had spent the last 2 hours preparing. She had taught the humans enough words to operate basic systems. She had positioned the freed prisoners at key points throughout the sleeper. She had done everything she could. Now it was time to see if it was enough. Beside her, Kang Tiho studied the enemy formations with a soldier's eye. "They are spreading out," he said, "surrounding us. They do not want us to run." "We were never going to run," Yuna said. The fleet commander's voice crackled over the communication channel. It was not Kryn. This was someone new, someone higher in command. A fleet admiral named Vorik. "Unidentified vessel," Vorik said, his voice cold and precise. "You are harboring fugitives from Velori justice. You have attacked Velori personnel. Surrender immediately or be destroyed." Yuna opened a channel to respond. "Admiral Vorik, I am Park Yuna, commander of this vessel. The fugitives you speak of are prisoners who were being transported to illegal labor camps. The personnel I attacked were trying to claim a ship that does not belong to them. This vessel is not Velori property. It never was. All space in this sector belongs to the Empire. All vessels in this sector belong to the Empire. You are in no position to negotiate, human." "I am not negotiating. I am explaining. This ship was built by my ancestors long before your empire existed. It has been waiting for a human to awaken it. I am that human. I have no desire for war, but I will not surrender my people to slavery." There was a pause, then Vorik laughed. It was a clicking, unpleasant sound. "Your ancestors. Humans have been in space for barely 3 centuries. You are children. You have no history. You have no legacy. You have only the scraps that older species allow you to take. This delusion will not save you." He cut the channel. On the display, the Velori ships began moving into attack formation. Tiho looked at Yuna. "What now?" She did not answer immediately. She was listening to something else, a sound only she could hear through her connection to the ship, a humming, growing stronger coming from somewhere far away. "Ship," she said, "did anyone answer our call?" "Yes, Commander. 3 vessels have responded. They are en route. Estimated arrival, 11 minutes. 3 ships against 127. The odds were still impossible. But they were better than 1 against 127. "We hold them for 11 minutes, Yuna said. "Ship, show me our defensive options." The display changed, revealing systems that had been dormant for ages. Shields capable of stopping planet-killing weapons. Point defense arrays that could track and destroy thousands of missiles simultaneously. And something else. Something the display simply called primary. "What is primary?" Yuna asked. "The main weapon," the ship replied. "It was designed to end battles quickly. It is not recommended for use against opponents this few." "This few? There are over 100 ships out there." "Yes, Commander, this few." Yuna felt a chill run down her spine. She was beginning to understand just how powerful the sleeper really was. The first humans had not simply been advanced. They had been something else entirely. They had been gods walking among the stars. And then they had given it all up. They had hidden. They had forgotten. They had become small and weak and ordinary because the alternative was too terrible to contemplate. "We will not use primary," Una said. "Not unless there is no other choice. Show me the defensive systems only." The Velori opened fire. 100 ships launched missiles and beam weapons at the sleeper simultaneously, the space around them filled with light and death. The shields held. On the display, Una watched the Velori weapons splash against invisible barriers like rain against glass. Not a single shot reached the hull. The humans in the command center cheered, but Una did not celebrate. This was only the beginning. "Return fire," she ordered. "Targeting engines only. Disable as many as you can without killing." The sleeper responded. Beams of light, precise as surgical tools, reached out and touched Velori ships one after another. Engines exploded. Power cores went dark. Ships began to drift, unable to move, unable to fight. In seconds, a dozen vessels were disabled. Admiral Vorik screamed orders over his fleet channel. The Velori regrouped and intensified their attack. Larger weapons now, heavier bombardment. The shields flickered under the assault, but they held. "Shield integrity at 92%, the ship reported. "Current attack patterns pose no significant threat." Minutes passed. More ships fell. The Velori grew desperate. They began ramming tactics, trying to physically breach the sleeper's hull. The ships that attempted this simply crumpled against the shields and were pushed away, broken and dead. 6 minutes until reinforcements arrive, the ship announced. Vorik's voice came over the channel again. All pretense of superiority was gone. He sounded afraid. "What are you? What is this ship? Nothing can do what you are doing, nothing." Una opened a channel. "We are humanity, Admiral. We are the children of the builders. We are the ones who forgot what we were, but we are starting to remember." Before he could respond, the sky changed. 3 points of light appeared in the darkness. They grew larger, brighter, until they resolved into shapes. Ships. Ships like the sleeper, but different. Each one was unique, each one ancient, each one burning with power that made the Velori fleet look like toys. They had come. The other guardians had answered the call. The new ships did not hesitate. They moved through the Velori fleet like wolves through sheep, disabling vessels with contemptuous ease. The battle was over in minutes. What had been an overwhelming force was reduced to scattered, drifting hulks. Admiral Vorik's flagship was the last to fall. Its engines died, its weapons went silent, and it hung motionless in space, defeated without ever landing a single effective blow. Una opened a channel to all ships. Her voice was calm, but it carried across the void to every surviving Velori. "This battle is over. Your soldiers will be returned to you. Your ships will be repaired enough to limp home, but you will carry a message back to your empire. Humanity is awake now. The First Fleet is rising. We do not want war. We do not seek conquest, but we will not be slaves. We will not be cargo. We will not be forgotten." She paused, letting the words sink in. "Tell your masters what you saw here today. Tell them that the children have come home." She closed the channel. Around her, the humans were silent. They stared at the displays showing the defeated fleet, the allied ships, the impossible victory. Tiho was the first to speak. "What happens now?" Una looked at the star maps. There were more ships out there, still sleeping, still waiting. There was a homeworld somewhere, the place where the first humans had come from before they spread across the galaxy. There were answers to questions she had not even thought to ask. And there was the knowledge that the galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. "Now we find the others," she said. "We wake them all, and then we find out who we really are." The sleeper hummed around her, ancient and powerful and patient. It had waited thousands of years for this moment. Now the waiting was over. Una thought of her grandmother, of the songs and the words and the long chain of memory that had brought her to this place. She wished the old woman could have seen this. She wished she could have told her that she understood now, that the burden had been worth it, that everything had led to this. "Thank you," she whispered to the grandmother who was no longer there. "I remember." The stars spread out before her, infinite and waiting. Somewhere out there, humanity's true history was hidden. Somewhere out there, the answers were waiting to be found. Park Yuna, prisoner turned commander, looked at the void and smiled. "Let us begin," she said. And the sleeper carried her forward into the unknown.